right, Cantor, let's do this.
Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Vani berov chastecha avovitecha eshtachave el hichal kodshecha b'yiratecha ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to Temple Israel. I'm Rabbi Michael Wolk here with Cantor Shira Lissick. We're thrilled to be spending Shabbat together with you, joining us on Zoom and on live stream. Welcome to Temple Israel. We're also very happy to have with us this morning Benjamin Spiegler and family. Benjamin is celebrating his bar mitzvah. He's going to be called to the Torah for the first time. And Ben, I'd like to invite you and your parents, Karen and Jason, to join us up on the bima for a presentation before we can get started. So Ben, you look around and you see many talitot or talesim in the sanctuary. The sign of being a Jewish adult is you put on your talis when you come into the synagogue to pray. And each person picks a design, picks a talis that they really like, that they enjoy. But what they all have in common are the tzitzit, the fringes, representing the Jewish traditions, the mitzvot, the commandments that we share and that we honor throughout our lives. I know that your beautiful talit matches your suit so well and came all the way from Israel. So we hope this is the first of many times that you get to use it. I'm going to ask your parents to recite the first bracha, the first blessing for raising your children in the Jewish traditions.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'gadel banim l'Torah.
Amen. And Ben, would you recite the bracha, the blessing for putting on the talit?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hitatef b'tzitzit.
Amen. And you can wrap Ben in his talis. And all together, please recite the Shehecheyanu, the blessing for doing a mitzvah for the very first time.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higyanu l'zman hazeh.
Amen.
L'zman hazeh, l'zman hazeh, l'zman hazeh, l'zman hazeh, hazeh.
Ben, you got here nice and early. I know that being here on time means you're late, so I'm glad that you got here before I did. Welcome. Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
I think so. All right, you guys can go back to your seat for a little bit. We turn in our Sidurim to page 147. The second paragraph of the page, Shacharit begins, Shochenad, page 147 in Sidor Lev Shalem.
Yesharim titala, titala, uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach, titbarach, shochena. marom vekadosh shemo shochenan marom vekadosh shemo shochenan marom vekadosh shemo v'chatu barnu taylim arashim navatila לפי שרים תתהללו דברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקהלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. וכן חובה כל יצורים לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל ולקלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך, משיחך.
Page 148, please rise.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו האל המלך. ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודאות האדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אל חי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד ברכילותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי זכור בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעמה וימרו אמן.
Bottom of page 149.
עריכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms light while creating darkness, who brings harmony while creating all. May be seated, page 150.
ברוך אתה, אדוני אלוהינו, מלך העולם, יוצר אור ובורא חושך, עושה שלום, שלום, ובורא את הכל. הכל יודוך בראש הרוח רוקעים קדוש כאדוני. מלחמה ודמיין. אפס פרצך גואלים לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים.
Page 151, El Adon.
אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך בפיקו נשמה, גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דת ותבונה סובבים אותו, המתגאה על חיות הקודש, ונדר בכבוד על המרכבה, זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדעת, בבינה ובהשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נאה זיום בכל העולם, תמכים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים במה רצון קונם. פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, תהילה ורינה לזכר מלכותו. קרא לשמש ויזרח אור, ראה והתקין צורת הלבנה. שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים, וחיות הקודש. לילה אשר שבה מכל המעשים ביום ויצהלה. יתברך משה אל שבח מעשה ידיך, ומאורי אור שעשית, יפרוך הסלע.
Page 153.
יתברך צורנו מגן וגואלנו, בורא קדושים. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים במעביר הרצון קונם, וכולם פותחים בפיהם בקדושות טהרה, בשירה ובזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים, ומפרים ומעריצים, ומקדישים וממליכים, את שם האל המלך הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, קדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ברורה ובנימה קדושה, כולם כחרונים ואומרים ביראה. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. והאופנים וחיות הקודש, ברעש כתוב מנסים לעומת צרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני, ממקומו לברוך מדינה. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו, ברוך אתה אדוני, יוצר המאורות.
Amen. Page 154. We gather together the four corners of the talit as we prepare for the Shema.
והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי פה ישועות עתו וברכת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך ויחדך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. והיה אם שמעו את תשמעו מצוותיי אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום. Adonai Elohechem, Amen.
Bottom of page 156.
לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים, וריסון אכל מרות אמונתו לה קיימת.
דבריו חיים וקיימים לכם לעד, עולמי עולמים.
האמת שטהור אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו ואימותינו, גואלנו גואל אבותינו ואימותינו, יוצרנו וישועתנו, פדינו מצילנו מעולם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך, עזרת אבותינו ואימותינו אתה ומעולם משיח ונאמר
לא שווה לך, מי שיודע כזה ככה. Moses, Miriam, and the people Israel joyfully sang this song to you, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Middle of page 158, please rise.
הילול אל היום ברוך הוא מבורך, משה ומרים ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך שפתיים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. תור ישראל ומביע עזרת ישראל, ובטחנו עמך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
We turn to page 159 and we join together in the beginning of the Shacharit Amidah.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק, משמיעים כל מנסים. לעומת סרפים, לעומתם, ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו, מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך, תמלוך בציון? מתי תמלוך, תמלוך בציון? בקרוב בימינו, בקרוב בימינו, לעולם ועד תשכון. בקרוב בימינו, בקרוב בימינו, לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש, תתגדל ותתקדש, בתוך ירושלים, ירושלים עירך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, ולנצח נצחים. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראה מלכותך, כדבר אמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ואדוני גודלך, לנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, בשבחך אלוהינו מפינו ימוש לעולם ועד, כי על מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Continue praying silently.
Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru amen. Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael.
Page 167, Kaddish Shalem.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
ועמד יברח ילותי במנחה בחיי חונה ומחנה בחזור בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישבח ויבר ותרומה וינשא ויתהדר ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשובחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. תתקבל צלצלנו בעצמנו כל ישראל קודם עוון וישמע ויאמרו אמן. שומר רב מן שמעי בכם עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. יעשה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן.
Amen. We continue on page 168 with the Torah service led by our bar mitzvah for today, Benjamin Ben Spiegler. Ben, come on up and join us on the bima. And many of the honors, the Aliyot, will be filled by Ben's family today. It's a great weekend for the family to be together because I know that Memorial Day weekend, many of you celebrate wedding anniversaries. So it's great to have you celebrate another simcha this week. To open the ark, I call on Nikki, Eric, Samira, and Asher Tamarkin, Ben's aunt and uncle and cousins, joining us from DC. And we wish Nikki and Eric a happy 10-year anniversary today. Invite everyone else to please rise.
Ein kamocha by Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kama asecha malchutecha malchut, kol olamim umamshotecha b'chol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malech, Adonai yimlo, leolam va'ed, Adonai oz, la'amo yitin, Adonai yirech, etmo v'shalom, Avcha rachamim, heitiva v'ratzon ha'etzion, tivnei homot Yerushalayim, tivnei homot Yerushalayim, ki v'chalevad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisam, Adono la'amim, vayahi bin socha Aaron, vayomer Moshe, Kumat Adonai, v'yafutzu oivecha, v'yonusu misanecha, mipanecha, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udavar Adonai, mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Lamo Yisrael, Bigdu Shato.
We are the servants of the Holy One whom we revere and whose Torah we revere at all times. Not on mortals do we rely, nor on angels do we depend, but on the God of heaven, the God of truth, whose Torah is truth, whose prophets are true, and who abounds in deeds of goodness and truth. In God do we put our trust, on God's holy, precious name do we offer praise. May it be your will that you open our hearts to your Torah, and you fulfill the desires of our hearts and the hearts of all your people Israel, for goodness, for life, and for peace. And let us say, Amen. I invite Ben's parents and grandparents, the Spieglers and the Zanders, to join us up on the bima. Ben leads us on our achetz, bottom of page 170.
Be on a rachetz, belish me kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana emar, tush berchan, be on a rachetz, Be anarachet, belishme kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana emar, tushbechan, yeche ra'ava, kadama, detiv tali, bibe oraita, betashli mishlayim, dalibi, beli batacho ama Yisrael, latavu l'chaim, belish la'am, Amen.
Jason, if you would now take the Torah from the ark and pass it l'dor v'ador from generation to generation, from Ben's grandparents to parents on to Ben, symbolizing the passing of our beloved traditions. Page 171, Ben leads us, Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adoninu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adoninu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai, Rama Shemo Yachda.
Lecha Adonai Hagdula v'Hagura v'Hatiferet v'Hanetzach v'Hahod Kichol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Kichol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Lecha Adonai הממלכה והמנעשה לכל ראש רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להדום רגליו קדוש הוא רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו.
May be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You can sit down also, Ben. Enjoy that nice, comfortable seat. It's the best seat in the house. It is. Welcome again to Temple Israel. We're glad that you're joining us over Zoom and over StreamSpot. And of course, welcome to Ben's family and friends joining us either here in person or virtually as well. We begin our Torah reading, the Torah portion of Beha'alotecha, in the Eitz Chaim Chumash on page 821, Numbers chapter 9, verse 15. Again, page 821 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. So I'd like to open this Dvar Torah by telling you a little bit about my mother-in-law, Sharon. As my wife, Heidi, made the decision to join the Jewish people through conversion, her mother is not Jewish. She's lived in Kentucky her entire life and actually had very little contact with Jewish people until her daughter became Jewish. But when Heidi and I got married, Sharon flew up to New York, of course, for the wedding, and for the first time experienced a Long Island Jewish wedding, which is, I don't know if they still will happen after the pandemic, but they were quite something beforehand. Obscene amounts of food and simcha dancing. Jewish weddings have that distinct style of dancing in them, of shtick, holding people up in chairs. She really was very shocked about that one. Takes you by surprise if you've never been to one. It's a strange setting to walk into, a Jewish wedding. But at some point, I overheard a conversation at our wedding where someone went up to Sharon and asked her, could you have imagined your daughter getting married like this 20 years ago? Could you have imagined this 20 years ago? To which she responded, I couldn't have imagined this 20 minutes ago. Ironically, since then, Sharon has adopted the title of Bubby to our children, the Yiddish term Bubby, while my mother has chosen the title Grandma, one of those little humorous, ironic things. And I think about Sharon and the difficulty of walking into a very Jewish space this Shabbat as we read in our Torah portion about another in-law visiting a new and a strange setting. Let's take a look at our Torah portion. Our story that we will read today picks up right as the Israelites are about to begin a journey. They have been camped at the foot of Mount Sinai for a year and a half as they learned the laws of the Torah from God and as they constructed the Mishkan, the first Jewish temple. Now they are ready to begin their trek to the Promised Land, to the land of Israel. God's presence is represented by a cloud during the day and by a great fire at night that hangs over the Mishkan, hangs over the sanctuary. Whenever the cloud would rise up from the temple and move forward, the Israelites would follow it. And whenever the cloud would stop, would lower, that's where the Israelites would next camp. But even though God is guiding the people through the cloud, Moses wants some extra help. As his father-in-law, a man named Yitro, or in this Torah portion, Chovav, a Midianite priest, is preparing to return to his home, Moses begs him to stay. When his father-in-law refuses, Moses persists and says, "Please do not leave us, inasmuch as you know where we should camp in the wilderness and can be our guide. So if you come with us, we will extend to you the same bounty that God grants us." He invites Yitro to join the Israelites, to join the Jewish people as they march towards the land of Israel, offers him, "Lead us, take us through this land that you know, and come live among us in the land of Israel." But then the Torah leaves us with something of a mystery. Instead of telling us Yitro's response, instead of telling us what Yitro does, the text cuts off the story in mid-conversation and moves on to the next topic. So we do not actually know how Yitro responded, whether he guided the Israelites through the wilderness to the land of Israel, or whether he returned to his own home. Looking at these verses, my reading would be that he continued to refuse Moses' offer, that he left the Israelites and returned home. But if we look at a later part of the story recorded in the book of Judges, one of the post-Torah books, once the Israelites are already in the land of Israel, we read a number of sections about the descendants of Moses' father-in-law that lived among the Israelites in the land of Israel. So it looks from a later source like Yitro did in fact stay, like he stayed with Moses, he remained with his family, and he took up Moses' offer of sharing in the land with the Israelite nation. So we go back to our Torah portion and ask, what happened to the ending? What happened to Yitro? Why was his response cut out? Why was his service to the Israelite people as their guide through the dangerous wilderness deleted, so to speak, from the Torah? Well, scholars provide a fascinating answer. Yitro, as we know, was not an Israelite. In fact, he was a Midianite, a nation that was known to be antagonistic to Israel, a nation that we will read about in a few weeks launches wars against the Israelite people. So, in compiling earlier stories together into the Torah, the compilers, the editors who set our sacred texts in writing, erased him and erased his contribution because they did not want to credit a Midianite with leading the Israelites to the Promised Land. Now, the compilation and the editing of the Torah is a very esoteric topic, but the phenomenon of ignoring Yitro's contribution is a very familiar one. 2 weeks ago, the Pew Research Center released its new study of the American Jewish community. And it came as no surprise that Jews tend to be more secular than many other groups of Americans, and that a very substantial portion of married Jewish people in America are married to non-Jewish spouses. Intermarriage, for as long as that has been a term, remains a fraught and emotional topic for Jewish Americans. For many Jews, it represents the end of the Jewish people and a reason to mourn. For many other Jews, it represents the fulfillment of the desire to be accepted by our neighbors. While anti-Semitism again rears its ugly head, we can take comfort, they would say, that so many Americans have no problem marrying Jewish people and joining Jewish families. As a rabbi committed to halakha, or Jewish laws, it represents the challenges of both honoring traditions that I cherish, traditions that I believe are ancient and in some way come from God, and at the same time honoring the life choices that Jews make for themselves, while recognizing that Jews in America can and will marry whomever they choose. I don't have answers to all of the questions that it raises, and I know that conservative Judaism, our branch in Judaism, will disappoint both people who want an uncompromising stance of rejection, and at the same time, people who would redefine Jewish faith in very different ways. We live in that tension, in that hard space. But I do learn something important from the story of Moses and his father-in-law. The Pew study also showed that in most family units where a Jewish person is married to a non-Jewish person, the family has chosen to raise their children as Jewish. Now, this means different things to different people, but it also means that there are a whole lot of non-Jewish people who are actively bringing Jewish practice into their homes and teaching it to their children. Unlike the editor of the Yitro story, who erased his contribution, our responsibility is to acknowledge the work of all those people and to honor them for it. They are part of our community, and we include them as much as we can. That's why, among other things, it's actually a very powerful moment when non-Jewish parents or grandparents stand up here on the bima with us and are part of passing the Torah lador vador from generation to generation, because they are part of passing the Torah on to their children. Our community does not look like it did 50 years ago, even 30 or 20 years ago. While we continue to be challenged by structural changes in the American Jewish community, like the prevalence of intermarriage, we can also learn from our earliest stories the importance of welcoming the people who have chosen to cast their lot together with the Jewish people. We turn to this story, the story of the Israelites traveling through the desert, being led by God and by Yitro, Parshat Behalotecha, page 821, beginning Numbers chapter 9, verse 15. Our Torah reading today is going to be a hybrid Torah reading, as we've been doing during the pandemic. Many of the readers will be joining us over Zoom. So our first Aliyah will be read by Steve Powell, and for this Aliyah, we call on Mary Gordon.
ויעזור ויגים ויושיע לחוכתים בו ונאמר אמין. הכל הבגודל נתנו כבוד לתורה, תעמוד מלכה טובה. Baruch HaKohen, Baruch שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו, ואתם מבכים באדוני אלוהיכם, חיים כולכם היום.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Uvyom hakim et hamishkan, kisa ha'anan et hamishkan, v'ohel ha'edut. Uva erev yeh hamishkan, kamar eish ad boker. Ken yeh tamid ha'anan yikasenu, umar eish laila. Ulfi Alod Anan Me'al HaOel Ve'acharekein Yisu B'nei Yisrael Uvimkom Asher Yishkran Sham Ha'anan Sham Yachanu B'nei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai Yisu B'nei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai Yachanu Kol Yamei Asher Yishkron Ha'anan Al HaMishkan Yachanu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tofenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher kochech, Mary, and I will see you again in a few minutes. We turn to the second Aliyah, Numbers chapter 9, verse 19, page 822. For this Aliyah, we call on Karen and Jeff Turk.
Yandu Chasya bar Avram David v'Chana Hindel v'Yaakov Levi. Baruch Adonai Morach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch. Eloheinu melech haolam.
Amen. Take it away, Steve.
Amen. Uv ha'ari ke'anan al mishkan yamim rabim. V'shamaru v'nei Yisrael et mishmeret Adonai v'lo yisa'u. V'yesh asher yeh anan yamim mispar. Al mishkan al pi Adonai yachanu v'al pi Adonai yisa'u. ויש אשר יהיה ענן מערב עד בוקר, ונעלה הענן בבוקר, ונשאו או יומם ולילה, ונעלה הענן ונשאו או יומיים, או חודש, או ימים. והאריך הענן המשכן, Lishkon Allah v'yachanu v'nei Yisrael v'lo Yisa'u uv'hu aloto Yisa'u al pi Adonai yachanu v'al pi Adonai Yisa'u et mishmeret Adonai shamaru al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe.
Asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayim olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Karen and Jeff, Yasher Koach. First of all, welcome back to the sanctuary. Karen, you spent a lot of time here in the last 4 weeks, but it's good to have both of you back here at services. And this week you are celebrating your 31st wedding anniversary, so a great simcha to come back. You join all the anniversaries in the Spiegler family. Before we give you a blessing in honor of Yom Shabbat, what's something that you remember about your wedding? What sticks out?
It was a great wedding.
It was a great wedding.
One thing I will say that everybody told us you'll never remember a thing about your wedding, and we remembered everything.
You remember everything? There we go.
Including the huge brick of halava that we had that I did not want. My mother insisted, and all of our friends still talk about it. So,
there you go. That's one of those interests. Every wedding has its little things like that you remember that everyone's talking about. We wish you many more happy and healthy years together as Cantor Lissick blesses you.
Yisheber hachavotinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'imotinu Sarah Rivka Rachav Leah Hu yivarech et Chasya bar Avram v'David v'Chana Hindel v'Yaakov ben Mordechai Bavur sheba'u hayom leodod l'shem kodsho al kol hachesed asher gamal lahem miyom chatunatam umiyom simchat libam ad hayom hazeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmerim v'yatzil leim mikol tzara v'tzukah mikol nega u'machala v'yishlach bracha v'yatzacha b'chol ma'aseh yedei Im kol Yisrael achehem v'nomar amen. Siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov. Siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov. Siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov. Yehelanu, 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 u'lechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, u'lechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, u'lechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, u'lechol Yisrael.
Yasher Koach, Mazel Tov, many more happy years together.
thank you.
We continue with the third Aliyah, Numbers chapter 10, verse 1, page 822 in the Chumashim. Our reader will be Mary Gordon, and for this Aliyah, we call on Barney Weinstock.
Yamod Baruch Mordechai ben Gabriel v'Chayalei Ashlishi.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Amorah.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim v'nasan lanu es Toraso. Baruch Atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Aseh lecha shtei hasotrot kesef nifshat ha'aseh otam. Tehayu lecha lenikra ha'eda umasa et hamachanot. Itaku bahem tenawadu elecha Koha Eka El Peka El Moed the Inda Aha Itkau the Noadu Elecha Hansi Rashe Ofe Israel Utkatem Tua Dinasu Hamahanot Afonim Tekma Utkatem Tua Sheni Dinasu Hamahanot Afonim Teimana Turuayit Kulamasehem Upakil Etakahal Dit Kuvelotari.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nasan lanu Torah semes v'chayei olam natan b'socheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen.
Barney Yashar Koach. Barney is marking the yort site of his brother, William Weinstock of blessed memory. And I'll recite the Male in his memory in just a second. Barney, what's something you would share that you remember about your brother?
Well, he was a lawyer. He worked for the state of New York and the New York State Insurance Fund. He became an expert in New York State workman's compensation law. Had a very successful career.
We honor his memory today. El Malei Rachamim Mishochein Bamromim Mamitzei Menucha Nechona Tacha Kanfei Ashkina Malo Kiroshim Utahorim Kizrekim Azirim Et Nishmat William Ben Gavriel V'Chayaleya Shahalach Lolamo Began Eden Tehei Menuchato Ana Bala Rachamim Astirehu Beseiter Kinafecha Leolam Yimutzeror B'Tzrachem Nishmato Adonai Nachalato V'Yanuach B'Shalom Mishkavo Ovenomar. Amen. His memory should always be for a blessing, Barney.
Thank you.
Yashar Koach. We continue with the fourth Aliyah, Numbers chapter 10, verse 8, page 823. We call on Ben's aunt and uncle, Rachel Zander and Ian Rifkind. You guys can come up here.
Switch. Baruch Leolam Vaed.
Adonai Hambarak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Uvnei Aharon hakohanim yitku b'chatzotzerot v'hayu lachem l'kuchat olam l'dorotechem v'kitavou milchama v'artzachem al hatzar hatzorer etchem v'hareotem b'chatzotzerot V'diz kartem lifnei Adonai Elohechem v'noshatem me'oivechem u'v'yom simchatchem u'v'mo'adechem u'vrashei kodshechem u'tkatem b'katzotzerot al olotechem v'al zivchei Shalmechem V'hayu lachem l'zikaron lifnei Elohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ian and Rachel, Yashar Koch and Mazel Tov on celebrating your nephew's bar mitzvah this week. I know you also celebrated your second wedding anniversary a few days ago. You had a big year. Welcomed Alex into your lives. Impressed how much he's grown. He's sleeping back there, it sounds like.
I think so.
We would know if he wasn't. Did you find that when he was born, people stopped paying attention to you?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's a cute kid. So.
He's a cute kid. Where was your wedding 2 years ago this week?
Greenville.
Greenville.
South Carolina.
Anything you remember that really stuck out?
We went by too fast.
The whole weekend.
Too quickly, it just flies
so
by.
much fun, yeah.
A lot of fun wedding. That's the best thing you can say about a wedding, right?
Yeah.
Well, Mazel Tov, you may celebrate many more happy years together. Cantor Lissick blesses you for your anniversary.
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב ואימותינו שרה רבקה רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את רחל חנה בת שמואל ופנינה ויצחק יעקב בן אליהו ושמואל. בעבור שבאו היום להודות לשם קודשו על כל החסד אשר גמל להם מיום חתונתם ומיום שמחת ליבם. עד היום הזה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמרם ויצילם מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, עם כל ישראל אחיהם, ונאמר אמן. לחיים טובים ושלום, לחיים טובים ושלום, לחיים טובים, לחיים טובים ושלום. מזל טוב.
We continue with the fifth Aliyah, Numbers chapter 10, verse 11, page 823. Our reader will be Barney Weinstock, and we call on Cornell, Bonnie, and Ari Spiegler, Ben's grandparents and uncle.
יעמדו חיים בן אהרון ויהודית, ובלומה דבורה בת יעקב ופגל, בת אהרון אדם, בן חיים ובלומה דבורה חמישי.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayehi bashana shenis, b'chodesh hasheni b'esrim b'chodesh, na'alo he'onan me'al mishkan edus, vayisu b'nei Yisrael, l'masehem mimidbar Sinai, vayishkon ha'onan b'midbar Paran, vayisu barishona, Al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe, vayisa degel machanei b'nei Yehuda, b'rishona l'tzivosam, ve'al tzivoo Nachshon ben Aminadav, ve'al tzivoo Matei b'nei Yisachar, Nisanel ben Suor, ve'al tzivoo Matei b'nei Zevulun, Eliav ben Chelon, Vehurad Hamishkan, Venasu V'nei Gershon U'v'nei Merari, Nosei Hamishkan, Venasa Degel Machanei Ruvain L'tzivosam, Ve'al Tzivoo Elitzur ben Shteur, Ve'al Tzivoo Matei b'nei Shimon, Shalumiel ben Suri Shaddai, Be'al Tzava Matei b'nei Gad, El Yasaf ben Deuel.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, וחיי עולם לתורתנו. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach and Mazel Tov to Cornell and to Bonnie and to Ari. Vakasha, welcome back to Charlotte. It's great that you could be here this weekend. We continue with the 6th Aliyah, Numbers chapter 10, verse 21, page 824. We call on Barry and Richard Zander, Ben's local grandparents.
Yamdu Penina bat Abba Yaakov v'Tzipora v'Shmuel ben Moshe v'Shifra Reza Shishi.
Baruch
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu b'kol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'nasu hakahosim nosei hamikdash. Vehikimu es hamikdash ad boam. V'nasa degel machane b'nei Ephraim l'tzivosam. Ve'al tzivoo Elishama ben Amihud. Ve'al tzivoo Matei b'nei Menashe. Gamliel ben Pedatzur. Ve'al tzivoo Matei b'nei Binyamin. Avidan ben Gidoni ve'nasa degel machane b'nei Dan me'asef l'chol machanos l'tzivosam ve'al tzivoo Achiezer ben Amishadai ve'al tzivoo Matei b'nei Asher Hagiel ben Achram ve'al tzivoo Matei b'nei Naphtali Achira ben Enan Ele Maseh b'nei Yisrael etzivosam vayisau.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emek v'hayei olam natan b'tokenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Barry, Richard, first of all, welcome back to the sanctuary. As you said last night, it's been a long time, too long. Great that you can come back for a simcha. Before services, I was outside with Karen and Jason and Ben looking at the setup, at the tent for the kiddush outdoors afterwards. And Karen, if I'm getting the quote correctly, said that you planned 3 weddings, and you said you could control everything besides the weather. Did I get that right? So you couldn't control the weather today, but it looks like you got lucky for this simcha. Mazel tov, we're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
We continue with the 7th Aliyah, Numbers chapter 10, verse 29, page 825. We call on parents of the bar mitzvah, Karen and Jason Spiegler.
Yamdu Karmit bat Shmuel v'Penina v'Shlomo ben Chaim v'Bella Shvi.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Moshe lechovav ben Ruel hamidyani chosei Moshe nos imanachnu el hamakom asher amar Adonai oso etein lachem lecha itanu ve'tavnu lach ki Adonai diber tov al Yisrael vayomer elav lo elech ki el artzi ve'el moladeti elech vayomer al not azov osanu ki al kein yodata chanoseinu bamidbar v'yisalanu le'enayim ve'hoya kiselech imanu ve'hoya hatov hahu asher yetiv Adonai imanu ve'itav lach vayisu mehar Adonai derech shloshesh yomim Aaron bris Adonai, no say alifnehem. Derech shaloshes yamim lo sur lahem menucha. Ve'anan Adonai aleihem yomam benasam min hamachaneh.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayu olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Jason, Karen, Mazel Tov on celebrating Ben's bar mitzvah today. You made it. You did all the planning. It's here. It's halfway over, actually. I told you it would zoom through it. You did a lovely job preparing. I want to thank you for the letter in the Torah on the top of Masada that you dedicated in my honor. And I'm sure everybody here and other guests also have their own letters in the Torah on top of Masada. It's really a very nice touch. I'll look forward to when we can all travel to Israel and see that Torah, maybe read from it. I know you're also celebrating 17 years of marriage this week, so we'll add that to the Simcha list. What do you remember from your wedding?
It was a 5-day long, never-ending event.
A 5-day
It
long.
went fast, but it never ended.
Went fast, but never ended.
5 days.
Beauty of Memorial Day weekend.
It's true. It just keeps on going. Everyone wants those dates. And you won the bar mitzvah lottery for that weekend. Who knew? Let's give them a blessing in honor of their 17th wedding
I
anniversary.
would be honored. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah Hu Yivarech et Karmit bat Shmuel v'Penina v'Shlomo ben Chaim v'Bella Bavur שבאו היום להודות לשם קודשו על כל החסד אשר גמל להם מיום חתונתן ומיום שמחה ליבם עד היום הזה הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמרם ויצילים מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם עם כל ישראל אחיהם ונאמר אמן. סימן טוב ומזל טוב ומזל טוב וסימן טוב סימן טוב ומזל טוב ומזל טוב וסימן טוב סימן טוב ומזל טוב ומזל טוב וסימן טוב יהי לנו יהי לנו יהי לנו ולכל ישראל יהי לנו ולכל ישראל יהי לנו ולכל ישראל יהי לנו ולכל ישראל
Mazel Tov, Yasher Koach, many more simchas. Sit down for a moment. Ben's like eager to go. Got 1 minute to go. Before we turn to the maftir, we pray on behalf of those who are ill, those in our lives in need of physical and spiritual well-being. Included in our prayers today, we think of Chana Miriam bat Rivka, Avram Mordechai ben Fega, Tamar bat Rachel Yehuda, Rav Yaakov Chai ben Hadassah, Shimon ben Yaakov Mordechai ben Naomi, Devorah bat Sarah, Hershel Yehoshua ben Malka, Perel bat Rezel, Dov ben Ita, Shmuel Yaakov ben Kalia ba'ari, Devorah Rachel, Malka bat Sarah, Leib Yisrael ben Sipora, Liza Meira bat Leah, Tzivia bat Chana, Yudit bat Miriam, Meira Bracha bat Chana, Tzipora bat Chasha, Fegla bat Chasha, Arya ben Malka, Rachel bat Ruth, Rav Moshe Elchanan ben Rav Abraham Halevi, Kalman Pinchas ben Moshe ve'eta, Sarah bat Chaya, Chanoch Yitzchak ben Sarah, Sarah bat Shendol, Benjamin Noah, Ever Yitzchak, Yosef ben Miriam, Shiri Ruth Batya bat Yaakova Yerushalayim, Cyril ben Moshe Kalman, Miriam Tzivia bat Aaron Vitova, Chava Charna bat Zev Dov, Leah bat Tzvi Zisela, Chaim Yitzchak ben Gittel Fagel, Howard and Beverly Kaufman, Elijah Avila, Jordana Faith Ram, Mabel Tannenbaum, Kathy Berlin, Maxine Albaum, Sandra Harold, Don Roth, Philip Lamansha, Tamara Rivera, and Tracy Albridge. Now take a moment to recite the names of anyone else we'd like to pray for this Shabbat morning. Cantor leads us in the Mishaberach prayer for healing.
Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say אבותינו, מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה, ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי מהומיה. Yiparach, Yiparach, Ve'yishabach, V'yibar V'yirma Miraseh V'yitadar, Ve'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Kucha Brichu, Le'ela Min Kol Birchata Ve'shirata, Ushbechata Ve'nechemata, Damiran V'yalma V'yimeru. Amen.
May be seated. Ben, when you're at a swim meet, about to start a race, what's the signal for the race to start? It's a take your mark, and then when do you go? When there's like a beep? Okay, I'm glad you didn't say a gunshot, because I don't want to say there's a gunshot in here. Well, take your mark, get ready for the beep, because we're about to call you for your first Aliyah to the Torah. The symbol of becoming a bar mitzvah is making the blessings over the Torah, thanking God for giving us, by us, you, not just your parents and grandparents, our traditions, but you personally. So we turn ahead to the Maftir Aliyah, page 835, Numbers chapter 12, verse 14. Take your mark, because we are happy to call to the Torah our bar mitzvah this morning, Benjamin Spiegler, accompanied by his parents.
Yamod, 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 Habachur habar mitzvah, Binyamin ben Shlomo veKarmit, Maftir chazak.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch atah Adonai notin ha'Torah.
Amen.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Ba'avicha yara ok yarak bevanecha, halo tikalem shiva yamim, isager shiva at yamim, mihut lamachane, v'cha'ar teasef, vatisager Miriam, Mihutz lamachane shivat yamim v'cha'am lo nasa ad he'asef Miriam v'cha'ar nazu ha'am mehatzerot v'yachanu b'midbar paran. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'yachei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notin ha'Torah.
Amen. Yashar Koach Ben, great job. And step back for a moment as we lift and dress the Torah. Call on Ian and Rachel to come back to the bima.
Yamdu hamagbiya v'hagolelet. Zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael, al pi Adonai yad Moshe, וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל ביד משה.
May be seated. Each week, in addition to reading from the Torah, we teach about the Torah portion through a Dvar Torah or a sermon, sharing the lessons of what each of us learns from our ancient texts, from our oldest stories. So, to teach us about his Torah portion, call on Ben to deliver his Dvar Torah.
Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for coming to my bar mitzvah. Earlier today, we read the Torah Parsha B'cha'alotecha. There are two stories in my portion that I would like to focus on. The first is when the Israelites were in the desert on their way to Israel. Even though God is feeding them a magical food called manna, they still complained. They were not happy about eating the same food every day and said they'd rather be in Egypt where they had all the food they wanted. They had forgotten that they were slaves, that they did not have freedom, and that they were treated badly. They did not appreciate what God did for them or how lucky they were right then. Even though not everything was perfect after they left Egypt, they were not slaves, they had freedom, and God took care of them. I learned from this story that we are very lucky and fortunate, even in a weird year with a pandemic. This year, I could have complained about not being able to see people in person. In this story, the Israelites forgot how lucky and fortunate they were. They forgot how terrible it was when they were slaves. We may have complained during the pandemic, but it could have been so much worse. We were fortunate that we were able to communicate with each other and could pretty much still get whatever we needed. We can be thankful after a pandemic to see family and friends, for going back to school, and to start traveling again. The second story that I found interesting in my Torah portion was about Miriam, who was Moses' older sister. Miriam offended God by saying mean things about Moses' wife and complaining that God did not speak to her. God was upset and gave her Zorat, an ancient skin disease. When someone had this contagious condition, they needed to leave the camp for 7 days. While Miriam was quarantined outside of the camp, the Israelites couldn't move their camp to the next stop. Instead, they waited for Miriam to heal and rejoin the group before moving on. From this story, I learned about how we treat people who we care about. We can make sure that no one is left behind now by talking to and checking on people remotely and by making cards or food for them when they are sick. Just like when the Israelites waited for Miriam to heal, we also do not leave people behind. We know that right now, even if we personally are not scared of getting sick, we still need to take precautions to protect people at risk. We can learn from this story that we should care for people even though their problem may not apply to you. It is important that the Israelites waited for Miriam because it shows that they care for her just like we do for everyone that has struggled during this pandemic. Even though we hope that we never live through another year like 2020, we can learn from the stories in my Torah portion about our experiences during COVID and how to act in hard situations. We can also learn from the people in our lives who have been through other hard situations. I spoke to all 4 of my grandparents about hard experiences from their past that I could learn from. One grandmother, who I call Yaya, shared with me that when she was growing up, girls were strongly encouraged to be nurses, teachers, or secretaries. She did go into teaching, but decided that was not the best job for her. Since then, she has been able to try many other fulfilling careers. My other grandmother grew up in a rough neighborhood in Philadelphia, living above her parents' store. They did not have a lot of friends or places to play. When she was in 6th grade, they moved and she had to meet new people and go to a new school. Because she did not have the opportunities of everyone else, my grandmother became introverted and quiet and had to work really hard to make friends. One grandfather, who I call Papa Richard, built up his own medical practice and for the first 4 years was on call almost every day, working very hard while he had very young children. My other grandfather, Saba, arrived in the United States from Israel in 1960 with very little money and spoke English with a heavy accent. He started college and supported himself while working 3 part-time jobs. He graduated college after 2 years and began working as the CFO of a public company. These tough experiences show me that it is important to have a strong desire to succeed with a positive work ethic and a great attitude, be friendly with everyone, be confident in what you're doing, and don't let anyone tell you you can't do something. Now I'd like to thank some of the people that helped me get here today. Rabbi Wolk, thank you for helping me and preparing me with my Devar Torah. I enjoyed getting to know you this year over Zoom and look forward to more in-person time with you in the future. Cantor Lisick, thank you for helping me learn my Torah portion, Haftorah, and for teaching me the blessings. You made sure that I learned all of these things in plenty of time before today. To all of my teachers, thank you for helping me and tutoring me and making sure that I was prepared for this weekend. Thank you to all of my family joining me in person today. It means a lot to have you here with me, even during the pandemic. I am also so happy that many family and friends can be here over Zoom. I wish you could be here in person and hope to see you all soon. Ethan and Serena, thank you for leaving me alone to study for my bar mitzvah. Ethan, I love doing the robotic projects with you and competing against you in swimming. Serena, I'm excited to see you develop your love of swimming like me. I can't wait until the 3 of us have swim meets again together and we can cheer each other on in the pool. Thank you, Mom, for everything you do for all of us, but especially helping me prepare for today. Whether it be taking me to swim practice, helping me study, making dinner, you're always there for me. Thank you, Dad, for always helping me out and giving me advice. I love watching Philly basketball, football, and baseball games with you, and I really love playing sports with you. I can already beat you on the track and in the pool, and it won't be long until I beat you in basketball too. You should keep working on that reverse layup. It's great to celebrate with you all today. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Ben, for teaching us. He had to rub it into you a little bit. It's okay. Ben is now going to chant his Haftarah, the Haftarah for Behalotcha. We turn in the Chumashim to page 837. The prophet Zechariah, beginning chapter 2, verse 14, page 837 in the Chumash.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim ratzah v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nvi hamet v'asedek. Rani vesimhi batzion ki hineni va v'shachanti v'tochei nayum Adonai v'nyovu goyim rabim el Adonai bayom hahu v'chayu li le'am v'shachanti v'tochei v'yadad ki Adonai sevaot shalchai elai v'nachal Adonai et Yehudat halko al Admat HaKodesh uvachar od b'Yerushalayim haskol basar mipnei Adonai ki ne'or mimom kodsho vayar'eni et Yehoshua HaKohen HaKadosh omed lifnei malach Adonai v'chasatan omed al yamino lesitno vayomer Adonai el hasatan Yigar Adonai Becha Hasatan V'Yigar Adonai Becha Habocher B'Yerushalayim Halo Zeh U'Mutzah Me'esh V'Yehoshua Haya Levush B'Gadim Zo'im Ve'omed Lifnei Hamalach Vaya'an Vayomer El Haomdim Lefanav Lemor Hasiru Habgadim Hatsulim Me'almav Vayomer Elai Re'eh He'avarti Me'alecha Abonecha Vechalbesh Otcha Mechalat Sod Va'omar Yasimu Zanif Tachor Arosho V'yasimu Hatzanif Hatachor Arosho V'yalbishu Begadim Umalach Adonai Omed V'ya'ad Malach Adonai V'Yehoshua Lemor Komar Adonai Sevaot Im Bidrachai Teileh V'imet Mishmarti Tishmor V'gam Atadandin Ebeti V'gam Tishmor Hatzirai V'natati Lacham Mechachim Ben Hamdim Ha'eleh Mana Yehoshua HaKohen HaGadol Ata V'recha Hayoshvim Lefanecha Yanshe Mofetz Hema Ki Hineni Mevi Ed Avdi Ze'ema Ki Hineni Ha'even Asher Nedatati Livnei Yehoshua Aleven Achat Shiva Einayim Hineni Mefateach Bitucha Ne'um Adonai Sevaot Umashdi Et Avon Ha'arti B'yom Echad Bayom Hahu Ne'um Adonai Sevaot Tikru Ish L'Re'eu El Tcha Gefen Be'el Tcha Ena Vayashov Hamalach Hadverbi Vayar Eni Ke'ish Asher Yaor Mishnato Vayomer Elai Ma'ata Ro'eh Va'omar Ve'eti Vehine Menorot Zechav Kula Begula Arosha Veshiva Nerotecha Alacha Shiva Veshiva Musakot Lanrod Asher Arosha Ushanayim Seitim Alecha Echad Mimiyim Hagula Ve'echad Ashmalah Ve'ka'an Vayomer El Hamalach Hadverbi Lemor Ma Ele Adoni Vaya'an Hamalach Hadverbi Vayomer Eli Halo Yadata Machema Ele Va'omar Lo Adoni Vaya'an Vayomer Eli Lemor Zed Devar Adonai El Zerubbabel Lemor Lo B'cha'il V'lo B'cho'a Ki Im B'drachai Amar Adonai Sevaot Mi Ata Har HaGadol Livnei Zerubbabel L'Mishor V'Hozi Et Ha'even Harasha Teshuot Hein Hein La Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Zor kol haolamim Sadik b'chol hadorot Ha'el ha'ne'eman Ha'omer v'yoseh Hamneber kayem Shekol dorav Emet v'tzedek Ne'eman Atahu Adonai Eloheinu V'Eliyahu ha'naviim Divarecha V'divarecha midvarecha Achor lo Yeshuv Rekam, Ki el Melech Ne'eman, Rachamav Akol, Rachamav Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaNe'eman, B'chol Dvarav, Racheim Al Tzion, Ki Beit Hayenu, V'la Taluvat Nefesh Toshriya, B'imheira V'yameinu, Baruch Ata Adonai, Misameach Zion Bevanecha Samheinu Adonai Eloheinu B'Eliyahu Hanaviim Avdecha Uv Malchut Beit David Meshivachecha B'imheira B'yavo B'Hagel Libeinu Al Ki Solo Yeshav Zar V'lo Yin Od Et Hakarim Kevodo Ki V'Shem Kotrocha Nishbata Lo Shelo Yichbet Nerol Olam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Magen David. Al HaTorah Ve'al HaVodah Ve'al HaNe'evarim Ve'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh Shnata Talanu Adonai Eloheinu Likdusha V'likducha Lachavod Ve'al Tifaret Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu Modim La Umvarchim Ota Yitbarach Shemha Befi Kol Hi Tamid Leolam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Great job, Ben. Karen and Jason, would you come stand with your son? And turn this way. Ben, Mazel Tov on celebrating your bar mitzvah today. It was great to have you 2 weeks ago here in the sanctuary for Dylan's bar mitzvah. Welcome back, Dylan. Good to have you here as well, sitting where Ben was 2 weeks ago. Now you're up here. It's your turn. Yasher Koach on leading us in Kabbalat Shabbat last night and services this morning. I know Musaf is still coming. On reading Torah and Haftarah, and on sharing your own personal words of Torah with all of us. I really liked how you learned both from the stories in your Torah portion and from your own family stories, family history. Mazel Tov as well to your parents, Karen and Jason, who are standing up here with you, to your siblings, Ethan and Serena, on deck, to your grandparents, Barry and Richard, and Cornell and Bonnie, and to all of your family and friends who are joining you today, either here in person or on Zoom. You've worked diligently to prepare for today in your time with Cantor and your time with me. Towards the end of your Torah portion, we read about Moses. Now, Moses was a very humble man, more so than any other man on earth. Ben, I've observed about you and also heard from your family that you share that trait to some degree with Moses. Humility, I think, is a positive trait. You don't call a lot of attention to yourself. You just achieve. You just continue to impress people. And that humility sometimes hides that fierce competitive spirit, that fierce desire to succeed that you have inside of you. I've heard, as I joked before, that one of your best characteristics is that you like to be early wherever you go so that you can be the first one. As you may learn, I don't know how the rest of your family is, but that's not a very Jewish character trait, but I think it's a very positive one. You push yourself and you take on new challenges, whether they are difficult engineering classes at school, bar mitzvah training, or, of course, anything to do with sports. So tell us, what do you play and who do you root for?
I swim for SwimMac, and I root for all the Philly teams, and when I root for the Panthers.
The Panthers? Okay, good choice, local team. But all of the Philly teams. Being a New Yorker, I can't quite get into being a Philadelphia Phillies fan or an Eagles or any of those. I hear Penn State is also important to you, and I see your grandfather was ribbing you a little bit with his New York Giants mask in the congregation. I know, I've heard that the Giants thing, he explained, skipped generation. Your family is mixed in that regard. But I'm glad that you have your city. And I know, of course, as you said, the most important activity for you is swimming, which you've been doing since you were 5 years old. You practice for hours, 6 days a week, concerned about missing practice. Don't want to go on vacation even because you might miss practice. What do you like about swimming?
I get to see my friends, and I like that it's very competitive.
You like the competitive part. It's you can push yourself, and it's really it's a personal sport. So you're you're competing against the person on either side of you in the pool, right? Mm-hmm. Now you may not know it, but there's an interesting teaching about swimming in Jewish tradition. The Talmud teaches us that parents have certain obligations to their children, starting with, for a son, having a bris. Your parents certainly took care of that. Teaching them about their Jewish faith. Your parents have taken care of that, demonstrating it today. Helping their children develop loving relationships with others, and teaching them the importance of finding a profession. You're gonna get that soon? Both of those? Okay. Now, at the end of the teaching, there is another opinion tacked on to those other categories. Some say that you should teach, you're responsible to teach your child how to swim, which your father did. I heard you inherited the love of swimming from him. So the other categories are somewhat self-explanatory. Obviously, we need to teach our children. We need to teach them how to relate to other people, teach them the importance of finding their own way in the world. But why do you think that swimming might be a skill that parents have to teach their children?
Well, in case you are in danger in the water and
So that's really, that's where my mind goes right away, that it's a survival skill. That probably in ancient times, if they were traveling across the sea, they were worried their boat might sink, and you better know how to swim. So maybe it's a way of saying your parents have to teach you how to live in the world, how to survive in the world. Many commentators interpret the idea of teaching one's child how to swim as a sign of teaching them how to become independent. You can hold a child in the water, as parents probably do the first time they take a child into the pool or the ocean. But at some point, you have to let go, hopefully having prepared that child to float, to kick, to swim on his or her own. So Ben, you have a wonderful family who have supported you, who have brought you to this point. They taught you how to swim, both literally and metaphorically, and now you can swim laps around your dad. Sorry, we're ribbing on you a lot too much today.
I do it myself. So.
Starting now, the beginning of your teenage years, you will face more and more situations on your own. And we hope that you continue to be guided by your family and by your teachers, but also really take upon yourself the independence of swimming your own way. Mazel tov, Ben. It's been great working with you, seeing that drive, seeing that determination to succeed, that competitive nature in you. And Cantor Lissick and I are so proud of what you've accomplished in preparation for today. Cantor Lissick is now going to bless you with the Berkat Kohanim, with the priestly blessing, followed by Siman Tov Mazel Tov. Everyone then has a chance to shower Ben with candy, and he will walk out from behind the plexiglass and give you a target. Cantor, let's give Ben a blessing.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך. We sing, כן יהי רצון, כן יהי רצון. יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך. כן יהי רצון, כן יהי רצון. May God bless you and protect you. May God show you favor and be gracious unto you. May God show you kindness and grant you peace and grant you peace. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Ken yehi ratzon, ken yehi ratzon, ken yehi ratzon, ken yehi ratzon. Siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov, siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov, siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov. Yehelanu, 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 u'lecho Yisrael. Yehelanu, Yehelanu, u'lecho Yisrael. Yehelanu, Yehelanu, u'lecho Yisrael. Yehelanu, Yehelanu, u'lecho Yisrael.
Ben, Mazel Tov, Yasher Koach. Great job. Karen and Jason, Mazel Tov. You got him here.
Okay, now go get all of them.
You can come gather. Serena, Ethan, everybody else, come on up and get some sugar.
Here.
Or you can throw it back at them, Ben. Cantor, I know we can't wait to get rid of the plexiglass, but I think someone in the sanctuary just took a pot shot at me and it bounced off the glass. I don't know who it was, but I heard it. There. This got very close. So we turn in the Sidurim to page 177. And before we go into the prayers for our country, the United States, and the prayer for the state of Israel, I want to reflect. There was a comment made on Twitter, source of many poor comments, by a man this week named Aaron Kayak, who had led Jewish engagement for the Biden-Harris campaign last year, engagement with the Jewish community. And he wrote, "It pains me to say this, but if you fear for your physical safety, take off your kippah and hide your Magen David, the necklace that many Jews will wear, symbolizing their Jewishness." It's a comment that really hits home for me, that I take really really a very sad comment. I chose to start wearing a kippah in public when I was 13 or 14 years old because I loved the idea of identifying as a Jewish person in public, something that everybody could see. And rarely, in the time since then, in the United States, have I felt endangered for wearing a kippah? Have I felt like that was a challenge to my safety? Now his comment, while actually correct from a halachic perspective, we're not supposed to put ourselves into danger by, through our performance of Jewish deeds. Comment was still disturbing and reflected the increase of anti-Semitic incidents that we have seen in the United States in the past few weeks, caused very much in response to the conflict in Israel and in Gaza. So as we pray for our country today, we include in our prayers that this always remain a country where we feel comfortable identifying as Jews in public, where we don't have to take off our kippot or hide our Magen David necklaces or hide any other Jewish symbols. It's been one of the greatest blessings of this country that we are able to say proudly and publicly that we are Jewish, and we pray that it continues. Page 177, please rise. I call on Ben's cousin, Sarah Jacobson, to lead us in the prayer for our country, the middle of 177.
Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government. Pour out your blessings upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, its judges, officers, and officials who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed so that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart from our land. Adonai, God, whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit will be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and compassion, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation. Grant the knowledge to judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, and the understanding and courage to root out poverty from our land. May it be your will that our land will be a blessing to all who dwell on earth, and may you cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me. And let us say,
Amen. Yasher kochech mazel tov. Page 178, the prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu shabashamayim, tzor Yisrael v'goalo. Bless the state of Israel that it may be the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them, crown their efforts with triumph. V'natata shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam leyoshveha. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. May be seated. We turn to page 181. Call on Ben to lead us responsively in the Ashrei.
Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, odi halalu hasela.
Ashrayam shekachalo, Ashrayam sharon ha'eloham.
Tehillah LeDavid, Armim Elachai HaMelech, V'avarcha shimcha le'olam va'ed.
V'chol yom avarcheka, v'alala shimcha le'olam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai umchol me'od v'ligdulato ein heker.
Dor l'dor yishavach ma'asecha, u'gvurotecha yagidu.
Hadar kevod hodecha v'divre niflotecha asicha.
V'zuz noratecha yomiru, gdulatcha asaprena.
Zecher rav tuvcha yabiu v'sidkatcha v'yiraninu.
Anin v'rachum Adonai, erech apayim u'gdal chesed.
Tov Adonai lakol, r'machamav al kol ma'asav.
Yoducha Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yivarchucha.
Kevod malchutcha yomiru, ugvuratecha yirabiru.
L'odia livnei Adam gvurotav, v'chvod adar malchuto.
Malchutcha malchut kol olamim umshotecha b'chol dor v'ador.
Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokef l'chol hakefufim.
Eni kol elecha yisibiru, v'atau noten lechem et achlam be'ito.
Poteach et yadecha, masbir l'chol chai ratzon.
Sa'adik Adonai b'chol dorav, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav.
Karov Adonai l'chol korav, v'chol asher yikru v'emet.
Ratzon yirav ya'aseh ve'et shavatam yishma v'yoshiem.
Shomer Adonai kol hava, v'kol shayim yashmid.
Tehilat Adonai yidabir pi, v'yirech kol basar shem kocho le'olam va'ed.
V'anachnu nevarech Yah me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah.
Page 183, we rise again for the conclusion of the Torah service. I call on Ethan and Serena to join us on the bima to open the ark. Jason, if you would hand the Torah to Ben. All right. Open it up.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, ki nishkav shemo levado.
Odo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren le'amo, tehila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, mizmor leDavid, Avul Adonai b'nei Elim, Avul Adonai kavod va'oz, Avul Adonai kevod shemo hishtachavu, L'Adonai behadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai l'mayim el hakavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover harazim, Vayshaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayarkitim kemo egel levanon b'siryon, kemo v'nereinim. Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholel hayalot, Vayechesof yarot ubehechalo, Kulo mer kavod, Adonai lamavu yashav, Vayishev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom.
Page 184.
Uvnucho yomar.
I have given you a precious inheritance. Do not forsake my teaching. It is a tree of life for those who grasp it, and all who hold on to it are blessed. Its ways are pleasant, and all its paths are peace. Turn us toward you, Adonai, and we will return to you. Make our days seem fresh as they once were. Eitz chaim hi leman kazin kimba, betom checha meushar, derachecha darchei noam, bechol netivotecha shalom, ashtivenu Adonai, Elecha v'nashuva Hadesh Yameinu kekedem.
Good job. Yasher Koach to Ethan and Serena. We continue with the Musaf service, beginning with the Chatzi Kaddish, middle of page 184.
יתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד יברך חידותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וימיכון בית תורה בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לא מעלמיה, יפרח, וישתבח, ויפאר בתרומה וינשא, ויתעזר שמיר קודשה, בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, משפחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ועמה וימרו.
Amen. On page 185, Ben and Cantor Lissick lead us in the beginning of the Musaf Amidah.
Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El HaGadol HaGibor v'Chanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Hasdei Avot, Umi V'Kol B'nechem, Lama'an Shemo B'Yachava, Melech Hoser Ufaket Umoshia Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Uvracham Ufaket Sarah Atagi Boiler Lam Adonai Mechaye Metim Matara Yoshia Mechalkel Hayim Behesed Mechaye Metim Berahim Ramim Sohmet Novlim Varache Holim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishene Yafar Micha Mocha Balgavurot Umi Dot Mela Malak Mimi Umekaye Umat Miel Yeshua Bene Eman Ata Lachayot Metim Baruch Ata Adonai Mechaye HaMetim
נעריצך ונקדישך כסוציח שרפי קודש המקדישים שמך בקודש ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה ביאמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו כבודו מלא עולם משרתו שואלים זה לזה איה מקום כבודו לעומתם ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו הוא יפן ברחמים ויחונם ומייחדים שמו ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים שמה ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית ברחמיו שנית לעיני כל חי שנית, ברחמיו שנית, לעיני כל חי, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור. Hallelujah.
Ledor vador,
Ledor vador,
ledor vador,
ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid galecha.
ledor vador,
Ledor vador,
ledor vador,
ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid galecha.
Ulanetza netzochim, ulanetza netzochim, kedushatecha nagdish. Ulanetza netzochim, kedushatecha nagdish. Ledor vador,
Ledor vador,
ledor vador,
ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid galecha.
ledor vador,
Ledor vador,
ledor vador,
ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid galecha.
Veshivachacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush leolam leolam va'ed Kyo melech gadol gadol vekadosh vekadosh ata Baruch ata Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
Continue silently.
Im shalom tova uvracha, chin v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Sim shalom tova uvracha, chin v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu, aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Sim shalom tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu, aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha.
Page 203, Kaddish Shalem.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
ויעמד דברי חירותי במלחמתי בחיי יכונו ומלחמנו בחיי תורו בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך. יתברך וישבח ויבר בתרומה וינשא ויתזר בישראל ויצלח שמי קודשה בריחו. לעילם ילכו ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בימה ויאמרו אמן. תיקבע צלזנו ואלצון זוכו ישראל קודם ובהנו בשמי ויאמרו אמן. יהי שם הרב מן שמי וחיים אלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן.
Amen. We turn to page 204, and I call on Dylan and Ian Sachs to lead us in Ein Kelohenu. Come on back up. Enter side.
Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kamoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Hadonenu, Mi Chemalkenu, Mi Kamoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Emalkenu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shehitiru Avotenu, Lefaneha Ekatorah Tasamim.
Gashakach, Dylan, and Ian. We continue page 205 with Aleinu. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומשה ויקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו איnon, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום בהשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת עינו. כי המלכות שלך יהיו למעט ימלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
May be seated. We turn to page 207. This Shabbat, we mark the yortzites of Helen Aronson Shear, William Bernard Leibowitz, Gertrude Sherman, Irene Eisenberg, William Weinstock, Mimi Benzel Gould, Walter Gould, Barbara Loeb, Sophia Podell, Charles Edgerly, Andrew Weber, Catherine Goodfriend, Isabel Summerstein, Myrna Trump, Olive Rich, Howard Weinberg, Cynthia Cohen, Jaime Zalman, Patrice Rosen, Sarah Berkman, Friedel Stern, Robert Katz, Rose Isakoff, Morris DuPont Robin, Lucille Becker, Francis Benetti, Bernard Beck, Lawrence Boxer, Elsie Dropkin Brodsky, Anna Roth, Minnie Sutker, Leah Solomon, Vivian Leibowitz, Francis Levine, Gloria Markman, Bernard Strouch, Sophia Mayer, Herbert Herbstman, Milton S. Cantor, Arlene Shapiro Miller, Ronald Moore, Abraham Cole, Herbert Peters, Bertha Lewin, Pearl Rosenthal, Sandra Novus, David Richmond, Sam Jerkovich, Nancy Rychek, David Gold, Fern Pomerantz, Neil Barris, Eileen Somerset, Esther Mund, Stefan Gutstein, Estelle Lieb, Meyer Cohen, Sadie Kay, Sally Sherman, Rabbi
hands in on that too.
We conclude Shabbat services this morning with Adon Olam on page 211. Following Adon Olam, we'll make Kiddush here in the sanctuary, and then I invite you to stay on Zoom for a special video montage in honor of our star, Ben. Page 211, Adon Olam.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra, Li'ed Nasa, B'chefta Kol, Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'yacharei Kichlot HaKol, Levado Yimloch Nara Adon Olam, V'hu Haya, V'hu Hoveh, V'hu Yeh V'tifara Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra, Li'ed Nasa, B'chefta Kol, Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'hu Eli, V'chai Goali, V'tur Chavli B'tzara Adon Olam, V'hu Nisi, Humanosli, Menon Kosi B'yom Ekra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra, Li'ed Nasa, B'chefta Kol, Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, B'yado Afkir Ruchi, V'yetishan V'yayir Adon Olam, V'im Ruchi Geviati, Adonai li v'lo ira, Adon Olam.
Please rise for Kiddush. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat le'dorotam berit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Beini u'b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Vayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Al ken berach Adonai yom HaShabbat vayikadeshehu, Sabri Maranan Rabbanan Rabotai, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei peri hagafem. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Shabbat Shalom, Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov, Shabbat
And if you're
Shalom.
here in the sanctuary, if you'd like to come forward and gather on the bima in front of the TV,